So, at what point are there just too many podcasts, too many YouTube channels, too many people talking about the same subject? And are we there yet? Well, you're listening to a YouTube channel about that. Let's do it. Hey there, this is Perch. YouTube, Google is incredibly lucky right now because they've figured out a model where everybody is just struggling to make lots and lots and lots of content for their platform. So, people want to be exposed. This is what being a publishing platform is all about. But unlike ventures in the past, there's really no gate. You can just publish and produce whatever you want, and that freedom is awesome. But it's also just fueling, Google. We're making Google money. We're getting them usage. We're getting them attention. We're getting them eyeballs. I think one of the interesting things that hasn't really kicked fully into gear, but if you look at technology trends and how content is produced, and I think this, by the way, completely relates to comics, and you'll see how in a second. Uh, we're producing volumes and volumes and volumes of material, and the game right now, if you're a Google, is to just try and eliminate any kind of block to making the content. Right now, the game is about getting as much content into the system as possible, getting all the channels, getting all the rest. That's why you see, you see rumbling about censorship, and you see it increasing a little bit as some of the social networks and some of these systems are starting to clamp down on certain people and certain things they provide. But there's an interesting thing at play here because for a long time, the dynamic, the motivation for all these platforms was not to censor anything. And you see a lot of people, primarily the outrage people, the people who really get hung up on outrage. You saw them, and by the way, you saw this both on the super liberal and on the religious right, where they were pointing at these social networks, saying, shouldn't you do something about this? Shouldn't you censor some of this? Shouldn't you eliminate some of these voices because they're pornographic or they're offensive or they're anti-religious or they're white nationalists or they're any number of reasons why the social networks should cut this content out. And by and large, the social networks did nothing. They remained relatively silent on the issue. They didn't get in there and start censoring stuff. They just kind of tried to take a step backward and pretend that none of the complaints were coming in and just deal with it that way. And there's a reason. It's not because they agreed with anything that was being said on any front. In fact, the majority of the people working in these companies have a very hardened ideology. As you get to know them, they're not. It's not like a group of people that all have different ideas and different views coming into the system. Companies like Google have, almost a 90% ideological similarity in the people that are hired and work there, which, by the way, I think is the thing that will destroy them in the end. But I'll get to that in a second too. But anyway, right now the goal was just to get as much content into the system as possible, fill up the libraries, if you will, of lots and lots and lots of content. And they're slowly starting to get to the point where not that they have enough, but they understand the model well enough that they don't need to acquire users. They don't need to acquire content. They need to start curating it. They need to start figuring out ways to monetize it a little bit better. They need to start figuring out how they attach other services and other things to the users they've acquired. Tech startups and companies that are trying to do this kind of thing, there's a kind of three-part business plan. And part one is get users. So get as many users using the system as possible. And it's expected during that first phase that you're losing money or you're quote unquote paying for those users. You're not getting them all right away, and you're not profitable. Your goal is just get mass. And then step two is to convert those users into ongoing revenue. This is where the hockey stick of money comes in. If you've ever been in a presentation like this, it's like we're getting lots of people, and then we're going to figure out a way to make money off all these people. We're gonna monetize their content, and then that's where you see explosive growth, because now you're saying, I think the pitch used to be, hey, imagine if I could get $1 a month from every user. And you're like, okay, well, that's not very much money, $1. That's nothing. You're like, yeah, that sounds like very little money, but imagine if I had a 10 million users as a startup. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, that's $10 million a month. You're saying you're a $120 million business. And it's like, yeah. So the goal of the company is spend a couple of years building users, getting lots and lots of users into the system. Then step two, monetize those users, blow up your revenue growth, and just make all that money. And then step three is provide auxiliary ways to now you've got the users, you've got a primary revenue source. What are other things we can do to sell advertising or get those users somewhere else, or however it happens to be. And so you see this play out, by the way, if you play any kind of mobile or tablet games. You see this kind of free game, get users, get people in, get them using the system, get them to the point where you've annoyed them slightly by either not enough gems or food or whatever to play the game successfully, so you start buying, and then ultimately convert them to the point where they can't really walk away from the game. They've put too much time and money into it, so now they're going to start buying some of the auxiliary things on top of it, and that's kind of the idea. So where YouTube is concerned, it's got lots of content, it's got lots of videos, got all this voice stuff going on. And now it is time for them to start pruning the tree and getting to what are the best and what are the real revenue producers. And here's where the ideological pruning will really take place. It'll take place in an interesting way. It's going to, first there's going to be preferences made to the algorithms and search and everything else to, basically game the system or give preference to thoughts and ideas that match the company's own. That's naturally going to have an effect of those thoughts and ideas are going to make a lot more money because they've got better search conditions, more favorable placement, more promotion that happens. So Google, when they're trying to figure out how to promote and how to expose, one channel over the other, in the beginning, it's kind of a crapshoot. They don't yet know what's going to stick. They don't know how this content's going to unfold, because they're making a bet on something that's not themselves. They're making a bet on users who are, out in the world, not Google employees. And so it's hard to understand how it's all going to fit. And they also don't fully know who their user base is going to be, and they've acquired the users. Now they're going to start curating. You're going to see more, channels getting punted and censorship, and it's going to be kind of this 1-2 punch of, providing, um, better placement, better promotion, better search conditions and everything else to ideologies that agree with them. Those are naturally then going to make more money. And so that gives more of a reason to promote the ones that make more money. And the ones that make less money are just going to, drop down and down the stack until the content producer either gives up because they're not making money, or ultimately is booted off the system because, they're causing headaches for YouTube and they're not bringing in money. So then what's the point of, placating those channels any further? Let's just get them out of here. So that's kind of what's going to happen. And in comics, I think there's a desperate need for community, but there's also a huge gap between kind of the big boys who are comic book commentators for your comic historian, or some of the long-term comic channels that do their thing, or you are the diversity in comics or whatever he's calling himself now, or Ethan Van Sciver. Others like celebrities are going to jump in. Rob Liefeld will make a channel and it'll be popular and have lots of subscribers, and so you'll have some of that going on. What'll be interesting is if all the creators just start making their own channels and kind of jumping on that eventually it will just create another way for the creators to cannibalize each other, and those voices will go back down. But you have the big guys, and then you have a huge gap, a huge distance of time, and you have the legion of small guys, and the small guys tend to operate, and I'm one of those. I'm a small guy. So the small guys all will operate under kind of they'll do one of two things, and it will kind of reflect the motivation for why they're doing what they're doing. Either they're just going to kind of stay the course, put out videos, on whatever basis, and just keep pumping out content, doing their thing, and not really, kind of assuming in the back of their head that if success is going to come, it's going to come. So just keep making videos. And then the other side, the other group, the other half will try and mimic or parody the big guys in the hopes that they can be a big guy. And the best fastest way to do that is just try and have a similar format, try and act, behave, communicate in the same way, and then all those subscribers will follow. And so you see quite a bit of that now in comics. You see a lot of people trying to become, diversity in comics too. You see plenty of people who are trying to follow that track. Now the challenge with that is, you really, where content's concerned, you don't really need two of the same thing. If you don't need the thing and the knockoff of the thing. People are just going to go to the original. So a lot of the copycats don't really work. The other problem is, if you get a topic, so I see this happen all the time where the diversity in comics guy will put up a topic about something, about some comic, and it's a good video because he's roasting the comic really well, and he's making some good jokes, and the comic itself is a little ludicrous, so it's a good one to roast, and so all that happens. And then what you see is 50 videos follow along from a bunch of other smaller channels who are like, oh, that was funny how he roasted that comic. I think I'll give it a try. So they do their roast of the same comic. And that's I don't want to say the trap. It's not a trap. It's just nobody wants to hear 50 videos on the same bad comic. I mean, even if each one tells a new and exciting joke, it's still 50 videos on the same topic, and the well gets dry really fast. And I think that's what I mean by, there are probably, well, I just posed a question. I didn't answer it. I will answer it. I think we do have a lot of content, and unfortunately a lot of the content, not just in comics, it's the same topics kind of over and over and over, to the point that they're really done to death. And so that's one of the challenges of content creators, is they've got to figure out a way to be able to make an exciting new topic, to be able to put something out that hasn't been talked about before. And I think more importantly, be brave about it. So the other thing that happens in all communities, and certainly true in comics, is if let's say you like the new She-Hulk, you like the big monster She-Hulk, this version of Jennifer Walters. If you go on social media, or you make a video, or you do any of that, and you present your case, like, hey, I think this character is good, and here's why. The odds of a big portion of the community not paying any attention to what you say, not bringing up any of your, or not listening to any of your evidence about why you like it, or just not leaving you alone in peace to like whatever you want to like, there's a big sizable audience, and is just going to bash on you for that endlessly. And so what that does is it creates this effect and I see it quite often with YouTube creators, where they might believe a certain thing, but they are either nervous or uneasy to just state their opinion. They're more in the mode to kind of follow along with the party line, because if they don't, they're going to get mobbed. And if their goal is to ultimately be very successful in this community and have the big YouTube numbers, then they're not going to want to buck the tide. And so this all has a side effect of, one, the person who's talking doesn't sound authentic. They sound like they're reading from a page at gunpoint, because they kind of are, even though they're holding the gun themselves. And the other part is, it's not even good entertainment, because people who are listening to these videos don't want to listen to the same thing 50 times. They want to hear different perspectives. They don't just want to hear regurgitated with different accents and voices. And so that's a challenge that all of these fan communities and other things are going to have, is how do you create interesting content without being pardon me, yawn was well timed, without being a Me Too kind of player. So I guess there's a whole Me Too movement. I don't mean Me Too like that Me Too. I mean Me Too like copying, like a copying movement. There you go. So anyway, so I think that some curation is necessary. It'll be very, just not to completely kind of side tangent. I think the next 2 to 3 years are going to be fascinating as Google and Twitter and some of these other people start severely curating and manipulating now the content in the library they have. And how they do that is going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be very cruel to many different groups. And I think that, people have forgotten a little bit that, you go 20 years back, You didn't have the ability as just a random person to go onto somewhere and write up a story and hit send and have it broadcast everywhere. You had to, it didn't work that way. You had to get your stuff into a magazine, or you had to, make friends with a publisher and work your way up and have a portfolio and all the rest. There wasn't a video platform. If you're going to make a movie, you had to make a movie, and distribute it somehow. It was like it created a barrier for a lot of this homegrown content. And we now have that 10 to 15 year period now where people have had open access to kind of do whatever they want. And that won't last. Like everything, there are cycles, and there's going to be a snap back on that cycle where suddenly things are going to get curated. Suddenly there is going to be more emphasis on quality content. And there's going to be a lot of people on all sides of the fence who are just going to scream bloody murder because their voice isn't being heard, forgetting that, there's kind of a technology bubble that created this situation where everybody had a voice at any time. And that bubble is closing. So that's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to create a lot of angry tantrums online. I can promise you that. Anyway, what do you think about all this? Are there too many videos? Are there not enough? Does it really matter? I mean, a lot of people do their own curating, so it's like, they don't need somebody else to tell them, what to listen to and what not to listen to. They figured it out on their own. So, is this you? Where do you think it should go? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notification. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch, and thank you for listening.